The cold wind howled through the mountains, rattling the wooden windows of a lonely hut at the edge of a forgotten village. Inside, a frail old woman sat by the dim glow of a candle, her wrinkled hands resting on a small wooden box. She stared at it, lost in thought, as if it held the weight of 1,000 memories. One evening, a restless young man from the village stormed into her hut. His eyes burned with frustration, his heart heavy with questions no one had answered. "Everyone says you're wise," he said bitterly. "Tell me, why is life so unfair? Why do some suffer while others live in ease? No matter how hard I try, I find no happiness. It all feels meaningless." The old woman looked up, her eyes deep and unreadable. Then, without a word, she opened the wooden box. Inside lay an old, tattered piece of paper. She carefully unfolded it, her voice trembling with emotion as she began her tale. "Many years ago," she whispered, "I was not an old woman but a young, proud mother. My world was filled with laughter. I had a son, my only treasure, the light of my life. We were poor, but we had enough love to fill an entire kingdom. But fate is a cruel storyteller. One winter, a terrible sickness swept through the village, stealing lives like a thief in the night. My son was one of the first to fall ill. I begged, I prayed, I sold everything I owned to buy medicine, but in the end, he slipped away in my arms." The old woman's voice cracked, and for a moment the candlelight flickered as if the wind itself mourned with her. The young man sat frozen, unable to look away. "I cursed the world that night," she continued, her voice hollow. "I screamed at the sky, demanding to know why happiness is given only to be stolen away. I hated life for its cruelty, and in my grief I made a vow, never to smile again, never to find joy, for the world did not deserve it." Her hands trembled as she held the paper tighter. But then, something happened. One evening, as I sat in my sorrow, an old beggar knocked on my door. He was starving, his hands shaking from the cold. Despite my grief, I gave him the last piece of bread I had left, and in return, he gave me this paper. The young man leaned forward, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "What does it say?" The old woman smiled sadly and whispered, "This too shall pass." The young man furrowed his brows. "That's it? Just 4 words," she nodded. 4 words that changed my life. At first I didn't understand, but as time went on I saw their truth. My grief, as deep as the ocean, began to fade, not because I forgot my son, but because life continued. I learned that pain is not eternal, neither is joy. Everything, every hardship, every happiness is temporary. We do not own our moments, we only experience them. She placed the paper back in the box and looked at the young man with knowing eyes. "You asked why life is unfair, but life is not unfair. It is changing, always moving. You suffer because you believe your pain is forever. You struggle because you think happiness is something to chase, something to hold on to. But the truth is, everything you fear, everything you love, will pass. The only thing that remains is how you choose to live in this moment." The young man sat in stunned silence. The wind outside had calmed. For the first time, he realized his problems were not eternal. His struggles, his pain, even his disappointments, all would pass. "But how do I find happiness?" he whispered. The old woman smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Happiness is not found, it is created. You must wake up each day and choose to see the beauty in the temporary. Choose to be kind, choose to love, choose to forgive. Because when all is gone, when everything fades, the only thing that remains is how you lived." The young man stood up, feeling as if the weight on his heart had lessened. He looked at the old woman one last time, bowing deeply before leaving her hut. And as he stepped into the night, for the first time in years, he felt the whisper of the wind, not as a curse, but as a reminder. Life is temporary, but our choices are eternal. Nothing lasts forever, not pain, not joy. The only thing that remains is how we choose to live. Happiness is not something you find, it is something you create. Every hardship, every suffering, this too shall pass, but your kindness, your love, your actions, they will be remembered forever. Now ask yourself, how will you choose to live today? Will you let life's pain define you, or will you create a story worth remembering? Comment below, what is one small thing you are grateful for today?